I was sitting in my car in the parking lot of a coffee shop in Millville, Tennessee, staring at a photograph on my phone. It was a page torn from the Sunday crossword. 3 words circled in red ink. The handwriting was shaky. Arthritis will do that after 78 years. But the message was steady. I'd been waiting 3 years for that signal. My parents spent 10 years telling everyone I was unemployed. They mocked me at church suppers, at cousin weddings, at my own grandmother's birthday party. What they never knew was that I investigate people exactly like them for a living, and Grandma had just sent me the code. What happened at that Thanksgiving table 30 minutes later ended up in the Millville paper. But first, you need to understand how a family decides one of their own is worth nothing, and what it costs them when they're wrong. I'm Bethany, 34. Most mornings I'm at my desk by 7, 3rd floor of the Knox County Government Building, fluorescent lights, beige walls, a coffee maker that's been broken since April. Nothing glamorous. My nameplate reads Senior Investigator, Adult Protective Services. I've held that title 6 years. Before that, a field caseworker for 4. 10 years total protecting elderly adults from financial exploitation, neglect, and abuse. My caseload averages 12 open files at any given time. In those 10 years, my unit recovered over $3 million stolen from elderly victims, pension funds drained by sons, savings accounts emptied by daughters-in-law, property deeds forged by nephews who thought Grandma wouldn't notice. 47 cases closed with my name on the lead. 47 families who got their money back, their dignity back, or at least the truth. I can spot a forged power of attorney from 3 pages away. I can read a bank statement the way a mechanic reads an engine. My own family had no idea about any of it. They knew one thing. Bethany left Millville after high school and never came back to do anything useful. That was enough for them. The crossword tradition started when I was 8. Every Sunday morning, Grandma Helen and I sat on the farmhouse porch working the puzzle from the Millville Daily Times, and she'd always explain the answer so I'd learn something. 7 across. Tenacity means you don't quit even when the pencil breaks. She taught 2nd grade for 40 years, retired with a pension, a savings account built 1 deposit at a time, and the farmhouse on 40 acres that had been in the family since 1952. When I was 16 and the rest of my family treated college like a foreign word, she pressed $500 into my hand after Thanksgiving dinner. Don't tell your mother. She'll never understand, but I do. Every graduation after that, she sent me a crossword page with 1 word circled. Proud. That tradition was a language only the 2 of us spoke. My mother, Linda Foster, got pregnant with my brother Darren at 17, 3 weeks into her freshman year at community college, and dropped out the same day the test came back positive. She spent the next 37 years raising 2 kids, running a household, working part-time at the church thrift shop, watching other women do what she couldn't finish. I don't think she ever forgave the world for that, and I know she never forgave me. She hated me not because she was cruel, but because I had the thing she'd been robbed of, the chance to leave. And when I took it and didn't come back with a husband or a visible paycheck she could brag about at the potluck, the resentment calcified into something permanent. My father, Ray Foster, drove long-haul trucks for 23 years, solid work, decent pay. Then, 6 years ago, his back gave out, 2 herniated discs, surgery, a year of physical therapy insurance only half covered. His trucking company folded. He filed for bankruptcy. Somewhere in the wreckage, he found online sports betting, and somewhere in the betting, he lost whatever savings he'd kept. Ray wasn't cruel by nature. He was cruel by debt. He went along with Linda's narrative about me because it was easier than explaining his own failures. If the family was busy laughing at Bethany, nobody was asking Ray where his pension went. And there was Darren, my older brother, 37, still in Millville, still working at the hardware store on Route 9. He stayed when I left, stayed when Dad's company folded, stayed when Mom moved back in with Grandma. In his mind, staying was loyalty and leaving was betrayal. He wasn't wrong to feel that way. He was just wrong about what loyalty actually looks like. 2 years ago, at a church potluck, I brought Grandma's green bean casserole as a peace offering. Linda, standing by the dessert table with her Bible study friends, didn't lower her voice. "Well, look who showed up. Bethany just sits in Knoxville doing Lord knows what." Darren chimed in without looking up. "At least she found time to come eat. That's the most productive thing she's done all year." Bigger laugh. I sat beside Grandma, who reached under the table and held my hand, her grip stronger than anyone in that room knew. I drove home and pulled over on the shoulder, just sat there for a while, then went home to bed. 18 months before the Thanksgiving that changed everything, our Wednesday phone calls started shrinking, 40 minutes down to 10, always ending with, "Linda's here, I can't talk long." One Wednesday, Grandma said something that made the hair on my neck stand up. "They changed my pill, dear. I'm not sure which ones I'm taking anymore." Medication control without explanation is a red flag I'd written into a dozen reports. When I asked to visit, Linda blocked me 2 weekends running. "She's napping, she doesn't want visitors." And Darren told me flatly to leave her alone. 3 months later, Grandma's property tax bill showed up delinquent for the first time in 51 years, $4,200 owed, after 51 years of on-time payments filed in a shoebox under the sink. I called Evelyn Calloway, Grandma's neighbor of 30 years, who told me she hadn't seen Grandma in the garden since spring. "Your mother doesn't let her out anymore." And that Ray came by 3 or 4 times a week in a new truck and new boots, while the gutters hung off the roof. Mrs. Calloway became our bridge, slipping across the property line every Wednesday while Linda was at the Kroger in Alcoa, 45 minutes round trip, almost to the minute, bringing a thermos of decaf and that week's crossword, then handing Grandma her phone. In our first real conversation in months, her voice thinner than I remembered, sentences stacked on top of each other like she was trying to outrun a clock, Grandma told me, "Ray handles the money now, all of it. I don't see my own bank statements. They changed my arthritis medicine, but nobody took me to the doctor. Ray picks up the pension checks, says he deposits them. I haven't seen a deposit slip in 4 months. I can't accuse my own child, Bethany." "You don't have to accuse anyone," I told her. "You just have to let someone help." I drove down that Saturday. Linda opened the door 6 inches, said Grandma was tired, didn't want company. I sat on the porch for 2 hours in the old wicker chair where we used to do crosswords, the garden dead with neglect, not winter dormant, but neglected dead, tomato cages rusted and collapsed, herb bed all crabgrass, nothing like the 4-time county fair winner it had been. 2 hours later, Ray pulled up in a 2-year-old F-150 with chrome package and mud tires, wearing an unworn Carhartt jacket, tags still on the sleeve, and Red Wing boots that hadn't seen a day of work. "Go home, Bethany. Nobody asked you to come." I looked at his new jacket, the hanging gutters above my head, the ruined garden. "Nice truck, Dad." He didn't answer, went inside. Mrs. Calloway had a key nobody else knew about, not to the house, but to a secondary savings account Grandma had opened 10 years earlier with Mrs. Calloway as co-signer, an emergency fund of about $9,000. A bank statement showed 3 $500 withdrawals in 2 months, all at the same ATM Linda passed on her Wednesday grocery run. "If she's gotten into this account," I told Mrs. Calloway, "the main account is worse." I brought the statement to my supervisor, Tom Reeves, and requested a third-party report with Janet Caldwell, our best investigator besides me, taking the lead so I could step back for conflict of interest. Writing Helen Marie Foster, 78, victim, felt like writing it on a headstone. Janet moved fast. A subpoena for the main account came back in 8 days. The account had held $131,000 2 years earlier. Now, monthly $2,000 withdrawals to Ray Foster labeled household expenses, totaling $48,000. $3,500 for a water heater that was never replaced. $4,500 for roof repair the gutters still showed never happened. $2,800 for electrical work. 6 checks to a medical billing company that didn't exist, deposited into Linda's personal account. Total missing, approximately $127,000. The power of attorney had been signed during Grandma's hospitalization for pneumonia, "Just temporary, Mom," and never returned. Her $340 a month arthritis prescription had gone unpaid for 3 months and been cut off by the pharmacy. Final balance on the last statement, $3,412.28. 40 years of teaching second grade, reduced to a balance that wouldn't cover 3 months of medication. The assistant DA, Paul Whitfield, reviewed everything: bank statements, the fraudulent POA, Mrs. Calloway's testimony, pharmacy records, and confirmed enough for a felony financial exploitation charge. What they needed was Grandma's voluntary confirmation, on her own terms, since Linda controlled all access. When I called the house, Linda refused to put Grandma on. "You had every opportunity, Bethany, scholarships, degrees, and what did you do with it? Nothing. At least Darren stayed." I tried Darren, who'd blocked me on social media. His email reply was blunt. "Mom handles everything. Stop trying to stir up drama. You don't get to care now. You abandoned us." He didn't know about the $127,000, the phantom invoices, the unpaid medication. He only knew the story Linda had written, and it was more comfortable than the truth. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Calloway called at 9 p.m., something she'd never done. Grandma had fallen in the bathroom, bruised her hip and hand, and Linda hadn't taken her to the hospital. "She can barely hold a pen," Mrs. Calloway also described seeing Linda's silhouette on the porch the night before, crying hard while holding a picture frame. Linda's own 1989 graduation portrait, the one Grandma had kept on the wall for 37 years. Something shifted in me. Not forgiveness, but recognition that my mother was a person broken by a choice made for her at 17, spending the rest of her life breaking everyone around her to even the score. "We're running out of time," I told Mrs. Calloway. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, it arrived. A crossword page hidden under Grandma's mattress. 3 words circled hard enough to dent the newsprint. Help. Trapped. Call. And one more word circled separately below. Thanksgiving. My hands didn't shake. I'd trained for exactly this kind of signal, just never expected it from my own grandmother. I walked the photo straight to Janet's desk. "She's asking for help, and she wants us there on Thanksgiving." Whitfield reviewed the case, 26 months of statements, the fraudulent POA, Mrs. Calloway's affidavit, pharmacy records, my call logs, and now the coded crossword, and authorized an APS emergency intervention with Janet as lead, Deputy Sam Morris for safety and to serve legal papers, and me present as family, no official role, because Grandma had sent her signal to me specifically. 10 days out, Darren created a family group text, everyone but me, announcing Thanksgiving at Grandma's. 22 confirmed guests, including Pastor Johnson, the same man who'd laughed at the potluck. I spent the next 3 days preparing 3 sets of copies: bank statements, the highlighted POA, Janet's investigation summary, Mrs. Calloway's affidavit, and the printed crossword photo, all in a folder labeled only with a case number. Thanksgiving morning, I put on my gray blazer, a work outfit, not a holiday one, and met Janet and Deputy Morris at a diner to run the timeline. Arrival at 12:30, APS notice presented, protective order served if needed. "You sure about the timing?" Morris asked. "My grandmother chose the day," I said. "I'm honoring her choice." We drove in procession past the elementary school where Grandma taught for 40 years, past First Baptist, past the hardware store, to the farmhouse, 6 vehicles already in the gravel driveway, smoke from the chimney, the smell of turkey and sage in the cold air. I parked past the mailbox, straightened my blazer, picked up the folder, and walked up the porch steps flanked by Janet and Deputy Morris. I knocked 3 firm times. Darren answered with a dish towel over his shoulder and the easy smile of a hosting son, until he saw Janet's APS badge and the deputy's uniform behind me. The towel slipped off his shoulder. "What is this?" We walked past Linda's 37-year-old graduation portrait into the dining room. 22 people around a long oak table, good china, turkey steaming, and at the far end, Grandma Helen in her blue church dress, hands folded, looking at my blazer and smiling. Forks stopped mid-air. Linda froze mid-carve. Ray's wineglass stopped halfway to his lips. Janet stepped forward and set the formal APS investigation notice beside the cranberry sauce. We have an active investigation into the financial exploitation of Helen Marie Foster. Over the past 24 months, approximately $127,000 has been withdrawn from her accounts, traced to Raymond and Linda Foster. She fanned all 26 pages of statements across the table between the turkey and the rolls. Ray's wine sloshed over his shaking hand, staining the white tablecloth red. Helen gave us that money. She wanted to help. Mr. Foster, Janet said. Her arthritis medication has gone unpaid for 3 months. Her property taxes are 6 months delinquent. The power of attorney was signed during a pneumonia hospitalization and never reviewed. Linda, gripping her chair, turned on me. You did this. You called the cops on your own mother. I answered in my courtroom voice, level and clear. I didn't call the cops, Mom. I am the investigation. My name is Bethany Foster. I'm a senior investigator for Tennessee Adult Protective Services. I've held this position for 10 years. My unit has resolved 47 cases of elder financial exploitation, recovering over $3 million for victims across East Tennessee. You always said I sat in Knoxville doing Lord knows what. Lord finally knows what I do, Mom, Linda exploded, her chair crashing over, screaming that I was ungrateful, that I'd accused her in her own mother's house. I didn't raise my voice. I'd learned that the louder someone gets, the quieter you stay, because power comes from not needing volume. It is her house, Mom, I said, and her money, and her choice. Ray tried once more. This is a family matter, a misunderstanding. But Janet cut through it. The billing company on 6 of the checks had been dissolved since 2019. No address, no employees. The funds deposited into Linda's personal account. Ray stared at the spreading wine stain and said nothing more. Then Grandma stood, Mrs. Calloway steadying her elbow, and the whole room turned. In her blue church dress, bruised hand resting on the tablecloth, trembling not from weakness but from 40 years of held-back patience, she said, I taught 2nd grade in this county for 40 years. I saved every penny I could. I raised my children in this house, under this roof, and they took everything from me except my crossword puzzles. That was their mistake. Nobody breathed. Darren, frozen in the kitchen doorway since we'd arrived, finally spoke, barely above a whisper. You were trying to tell me. The email about the property tax. I thought you were just... He couldn't finish. I know what you thought, Darren. Deputy Morris stepped forward. Ray was being asked to accompany him for questioning on felony elder financial exploitation. Linda was being served a temporary order restricting contact with Helen and access to her accounts. As Linda was led past Grandma's chair, Grandma looked up at her daughter with sadness instead of anger. I kept your graduation photo on the wall, Linda. 40 years. I was so proud of you. Linda's face crumpled, the tears of someone caught, not someone sorry. I know the difference. I've seen it 47 times. 3 months after that Thanksgiving, Ray took a plea deal. Felony elder financial exploitation, 18 months supervised probation, $48,000 restitution over 5 years, permanent no-contact order. The judge was unmoved by his hardship argument, noting the new truck and unworn jackets. Linda's case went to trial in February. The jury deliberated 4 hours and convicted her on 2 counts of financial exploitation and 1 count of theft over $10,000. Within weeks, Grandma's power of attorney was formally and permanently revoked, her accounts frozen, audited, and restored to her sole control. The balance will never reach $131,000 again, but the bleeding stopped. I paid her delinquent property taxes myself. She insisted on paying me back at $12 a month, because that's who she is. Her arthritis prescription was reinstated. A home health nurse visits 3 times a week, and Mrs. Calloway comes by every day. Darren went silent for 2 months. In late January, an email arrived with an empty subject line. I'm sorry, I should have listened. I wrote back inviting him to Sunday dinner. He came, with flowers and a dollar store crossword book, and Grandma made him sit in the wicker chair until he'd finished the first puzzle, helping him when he got stuck on 7 across. One Sunday morning in April, I drove the 45 minutes to Millville with the windows down, dogwoods blooming along Route 9, the mountains soft and green in the distance. The gutters had been replaced. Darren did it himself, 3 weekends running. The garden was coming back, Mrs. Calloway helping Grandma plant new tomato starts, and a row of basil along the fence. The herb bed weeded, the porch steps swept. On the porch, in the wicker chair, sat Grandma Helen, coffee on the armrest, the Sunday paper open on her lap. I sat beside her. She handed me a pencil, and we worked in silence a while, just graphite on newsprint and cardinals calling from the cedar tree. She tapped a clue. 9 letters. What you build when no one is watching. I smiled. Character, Grandma. She nodded, filled it in. I knew you'd get that one. The people who mock your silence will never understand what you're building inside it. But the ones who need you will always find a way to call. A crossword puzzle, 3 words circled in red, that's all it took to unravel 10 years of lies, a decade of casseroles and cruel jokes, and a family that decided long before I ever got the chance to prove otherwise. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Leave a comment if you've ever been underestimated, and subscribe.